NASA picks Blue Origin-led group to build moon lander for Artemis V mission. After losing out to SpaceX, Jeff Bezos' rocket company will get a chance to carry astronauts to the moon's surface. On the second try, Jeff Bezos and his rocket company have won a contract to take NASA astronauts to the surface of the moon. NASA announced on Friday that it had awarded a contract to Mr. Bezos' company, Blue Origin, to provide its Blue Moon lander for a lunar mission that is currently scheduled to launch in 2029. The mission, Artemis V, is another key piece of NASA's Artemis program, which is to send astronauts back to the moon as part of an effort to explore the South Pole region. Astronauts are to land on the moon in a vehicle built by SpaceX for the Artemis I and IV missions. "We want more competition," Bill Nelson, the NASA administrator, during the event on Friday at NASA headquarters in Washington on Friday. "It means that you have reliability. You have backups." NASA will pay $3.4 billion to Blue Origin, and John Kaularius, Blue Origin's vice president for lunar transportation, said the company was contributing well north of that amount to the development effort. The winning of the contract could start a promising rebound year for Blue Origin after a number of delays and setbacks. That includes the failure of one of its New Shepard vehicles, which traveled to space but not to orbit, during a launch last September that carried experiments but no passengers. Blue Origin has identified the cause and hopes to resume New Shepard flights involving both space tourists and scientific cargo later this year. And some hardware manufactured by Blue Origin might finally be used on an orbital mission in the coming months. The company built engines for the booster stage of the Vulcan rocket being developed by the United Launch Alliance, a joint venture of the aerospace giants Boeing and Lockheed Martin. Blue Origin might also provide some public glimpses of New Glenn, a much larger rocket that is to launch payloads to orbit. For the lunar lander contract, Blue Origin, collaborating with other aerospace companies including Boeing and Lockheed Martin, beat a second team led by Dynetics, a defense company based in Huntsville, Iowa. Dynetics, a subsidiary of Leidos of Reston, VA, had enlisted the help of the aerospace contractor Northrop Grumman for its bid. Blue Origin and Dynetics were disappointed losers in 2021 when NASA awarded a $2.9 billion contract to SpaceX to build a variation of its giant Starship vehicle that would land astronauts on the moon for the first time in more than half a century. The two companies protested the decision, especially because NASA officials originally aimed to award two contracts that would have paralleled successful efforts by NASA that turned over to private companies the transportation of cargo and crew to the International Space Station. Competition helps drive costs down and provides redundancy if something goes wrong, agency officials have said. But in giving just one award to SpaceX, NASA officials said there was not enough money in their budget for a second lander. SpaceX's $2.9 billion bid was the lowest bid by far. Blue Origin's proposed design had a price tag of $6 billion, and the one offered by Dynetics was even more expensive. The Federal Government Accountability Office rejected the protests of the two companies. Blue Origin then sued in federal court and again lost. Last year, after winning a larger budget from Congress, NASA announced a competition for a second lunar lander. Dynetics and Blue Origin decided to compete again, although there was some shuffling of the companies participating in the efforts. Northrop Grumman, which was part of Blue Origin's original proposal, switched to the Dynetics team. Blue Origin added to its team Boeing. Astrobotic, a small Pittsburgh company that is developing robotic lunar landers, and Honeybee Robotics, a space technology company that Blue Origin bought last year. The Blue Origin lander, which is designed to take two astronauts to the moon's South Pole region, will not get to the moon for quite a while. SpaceX's initial $2.9 billion contract was to provide the lander for the first moon landing during Artemis I, which is currently scheduled for late 2025 but is likely to slip to 2026 or later. In November, NASA exercised a $1.15 billion option in that contract for SpaceX to provide a lander for Artemis as well, a mission that is scheduled for 2028. Blue Origin loses legal fight over SpaceX's NASA moon contract. A federal judge rejected the argument by Jeff Bezos' rocket company that NASA unfairly awarded a lunar lander contract to Elon Musk's firm. A federal judge on Thursday rejected Jeff Bezos' latest legal attempt to overturn NASA's multi-billion-dollar moon lander contract with Elon Musk's SpaceX. The decision ended a months-long battle between the space companies of two of the world's richest men that posed a significant obstacle to NASA's plans for returning humans to the moon for the first time since 1972. The ruling makes it all but certain that whenever American astronauts return to the lunar surface, they will be traveling in a spacecraft built by Mr. Musk's company. That adds another victory for SpaceX, a company that has become a dominant player in orbital spaceflight, including serving as a primary partner of NASA in carrying astronauts and cargo to the International Space Station. But NASA has been unable to work on the program with SpaceX for the duration of Blue Origin's legal challenges, which may delay the return to the moon. It's been disappointing to not be able to make progress, said Pam Melroy, NASA's deputy administrator, in an interview on Wednesday before the ruling was released. She added that meeting with the company to assess the timeline for the moon mission was a very high priority for NASA, now that the litigation ended in its favor. Blue Origin sued NASA in August, contending that the agency unfairly awarded to SpaceX a $2.9 billion contract in April to conduct the first two missions to the moon. The contract feud was one of many industry conflicts that reflected the clashing ambitions of two entrepreneurs who are pouring billions of dollars into rival efforts to normalize space transportation. The launches that were the subject of the dispute are to be part of Artemis, NASA's flagship effort to build an American presence on the lunar surface. The coveted contract to put humans on the moon would have provided a crucial boost to the credibility of Blue Origin, which has flown humans to the edge of space in a tourist spacecraft, but has struggled to advance its ambitions of building a rocket that could lift cargo to orbit for NASA and the Department of Defense. After it lost to SpaceX, Mr. Bezos' company engaged in months of legal jostling, rigorous lobbying and public complaining. The ruling by Judge Richard A. Hertling of the U.S. Court of Federal Claims denied Blue Origin's arguments and sided with NASA and SpaceX on Thursday, handing Blue Origin its second defeat after it first protested the SpaceX contract unsuccessfully to a government oversight agency earlier this year. But his full order and the rationale it offered was sealed. Whatever the judge's reasoning, Blue Origin has few other legal avenues to challenge the contract. Not the decision we wanted, Mr. Bezos wrote on Twitter after the ruling, but we respect the court's judgment and wish full success for NASA and SpaceX on the contract. A spokesman for Blue Origin said the company's lawsuit highlighted what it considered important safety issues in NASA's effort to award funds for a lunar lander that must still be addressed, but added, "We look forward to hearing from NASA on next steps for future moon lander competitions under the Artemis program." Blue Origin won $25 million from NASA in September in a modest lunar lander design program. A spokeswoman for NASA said the agency plans to resume work with SpaceX as soon as possible and added that more contracts for additional lunar missions will be announced next year. While SpaceX did not comment, Mr. Musk, reacting to the ruling, posted an image on Twitter referencing Judge Dredd, a dystopian science fiction comic book and film, that said, "You have been judged." Blue Origin had partnered with Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman and Draper to develop and offer its Blue Moon lunar lander to NASA at a cost of $5.9 billion. It had hoped that assembling a team of aerospace heavyweights would be too good for NASA to turn down. NASA initially wanted to pick two different lunar lander systems in case one fell behind during development, but it was limited by funding from Congress, which last year allocated only a quarter of what the White House requested for the program. NASA ended up giving a contract to SpaceX alone, as the company's bid was half the price of Blue Origin's Blue Moon proposal. The NASA funds, now unlocked by the agency's court victory, will help fuel the whirlwind development of Starship, a fully reusable system that is the centerpiece of Mr. Musk's ambitions to eventually send people to Mars. The company has been developing and test launching the rocket at its rapidly expanding facilities in South Texas. After several tests of the vehicle that ended in explosions, the company completed a high-altitude flight that landed successfully in May. In the near future, the company plans an orbital test of the spacecraft with no passengers aboard. The NASA contract calls for 2 Starship trips to the moon and back, with the second mission carrying American astronauts. NASA's stated deadline for the lunar landing, first announced by the Trump administration, is 2024. But that was widely viewed as unrealistic even before B.